Today we're going to be looking at Colourpop in the color Silver. So first thing you may notice is that my swatches are labeled 1 through 12. I do just want to say they are not synonymous with hair levels, they just are to help us keep track of each swatch throughout the video. 1 is pink, 2 is a cool tone gray, 3 is a darker natural red, 4 is black, 4 to 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde, and then 12 is kind of like a toned version of number 11. So to start, I will take the color directly from the container and I will apply it to the top of each swatch. Then some people do like to dilute their dyes, so I will do a diluted version at the bottom of each swatch. Please keep in mind everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take color differently. Plus different screens and monitors can make colors look different, so please just use my video as a reference for how this could possibly turn out for you. Unfortunately, I have a feeling that these Colourpop dyes are going to be discontinued because they're kind of hard to find on the website and they've been on sale for a while, so I don't know if this video is completely pointless. But at the very least, hopefully it helps anybody who can get their hands on the dye, and hopefully I'm wrong and they aren't discontinuing. For the diluted section, we're going to do a 4:1 ratio. So that's going to be 1 part of the dye to 4 parts diluter. I do sometimes get questions about what diluter is. My easy answer is that it's essentially something that lightens the color of a semi-permanent dye. Some brands will make their own version of a diluter, but to keep the consistency between all of my videos, I just use a plain white conditioner as my diluter. I'm going to let these sit for about 2 hours to let the color completely absorb into the swatches. I will then rinse it out, and when they are dry, I will meet you back here and we can do some comparisons. Alright, as a reminder, my swatches are not virgin hair. So virgin hair tends to be less porous, which essentially can mean that it can struggle to take semi-permanent color because it is less porous. So even though I see a difference probably up to like number 6, if your hair is virgin hair, it's never been dyed before, especially not with anything chemical, there's a chance your hair could turn out very different from mine. Overall, this is a unique gray to my collection because I was looking through what I have and none of them are this dark. All of my gray are way lighter, so I like that, and that alone makes me hope that they're not discontinuing this color, but if they do, we can try to find a dupe together. So number 1 was pink originally. Over the direct dye portion, I would say it does look gray, but I still see a lot of those pinky undertones coming through. So if you could imagine what a dark pinky gray looks like, that is what I see on the direct dye portion for number 1. The diluted section for number 1, I'm sure you can tell, you can still see a lot of pink, but it did kind of make it look a little bit more dusty than before, which I think is my favorite thing about gray dye, is that you can dilute them so that they leave more of a sheer dusting over your hair versus like straight up gray. So if you're looking to cover your pink, you probably want it lighter than my swatch, unless you don't mind the pink kind of coming through with the gray for the direct dye, and diluting it will not be enough to get rid of the pink or cover it, I guess, but I think it turned out pretty cute. Number 2 was our cool tone gray swatch. So the undertone of my gray swatch before definitely leaned a little bit more blue, whereas this gray I would say is a pretty good neutral gray. I don't know if it's possible to tell on camera, but looking at the direct dye portion for the Colourpop obviously is gray, but when you see it next to the diluted section almost looks blue in comparison. And I guess comparing it to like the blonde swatch, for example, I do see a little bit more of those blues coming through. But even on the diluted section, it definitely kind of took out some of those blue tones. It cooled it in a more gray direction instead of a blue direction. It just didn't take as strongly as some of the other lighter swatches. 3, I'm gonna lump that one in with like number 6, I would say, maybe between 6 and 7. I definitely see more gray on the direct dye portion than I do for number 6, but overall they turned out pretty similar on the direct dye. Number 6 was a medium to dark kind of chocolatey brown. So on both the direct dyes, I still see a little bit of the warmth from the hair before coming through. But again, the gray kind of just toned it out. I would say the gray took a little bit better on the 3 than the 6, because looking at the 3, it does look gray on the top, whereas the number 6 almost just looks like a darker, more ashy brown. As for the diluted section for number 3, it still looks very, very warm, very much like a natural red. Maybe in the before and afters, we could possibly be able to tell if it did tone it down a little bit. It probably did, but from here, it doesn't look that much different. I also didn't mean to dilute it so much. I just assumed because the color was so dark that it was super pigmented. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, it's still more pigmented than like a pastel color is, but it lightened up very fast, which tells me it's not an extremely pigmented color. Number 4 was black. I don't see a difference on that one. 5 was a really dark brown. Interestingly, if I look at the top versus the top definitely looks darker than the bottom. So there is a difference, but it just still looks, I think it probably did make it look a little bit more ashy, sort of like number 6, where it's sort of like an ashy brown now instead of a warmer brown, but overall still very brown looking. If you are worried about it turning gray on your brown hair, you could always dilute it. In fact, I would recommend, if you were doing this, to make your hair more gray, but not like actually gray, just kind of change the undertone. I would recommend diluting it. But overall, the swatch looks brown, just the bottom looks a little lighter. So jumping to number 7, I think that's where we get the gray again. So comparing to 5 and 6, I think those are just a little bit too dark beforehand to look truly gray. Whereas 7, even though it didn't take as well as maybe like the 11, overall it still looks gray on the number 7 direct dye portion. 7, 8, and 9, I can just barely see a little bit of that previous color shining through the gray. So it's just not as opaque looking as it looks on number 11 and 12. It almost has a little bit of a sheerness, but obviously the color is so dark compared to what they looked like before that they still definitely look very gray. And then again, diluted section, all it really did on the bottoms is tone out some of the warmth. I don't know if tone is actually the right word, but it changed the undertone, made it slightly bit more cool on all of them. So like as the swatches get lighter, the more the gray can kind of stick to the hair, so it looks more and more cool toned. 10 is interesting because it sort of falls between 9 and 11. Obviously, that does make sense. Like I said, the 7, 8, 9, the color almost has a tiny bit of sheerness to it almost, where I can see a bit of the color before peeking through, whereas with 11, it just looks like a true dark gray, maybe like a charcoal. Whereas 10, it doesn't look quite as sheer as it looked on the deeper ones, but it's not as opaque as it looks on number 11, sort of in between. So depending on the look you're going for, I would probably recommend trying to get your hair as light as possible, but because this is a darker color, there is a little bit of leeway that you can have. As for the diluted section, in some lighting, it looks straight up gray, like more shadowed house lighting. I do have a ring light right now where I can see a lot more of those natural tones coming through, so it does look like a very ashy blonde on the number 10. Number 11, again, looks very intentional on the number 11, and even the diluted section looks quite nice and even and consistent. I actually really like this color. I may go back and buy more considering they're on sale just to use in my own hair. Because my favorite thing about darker dye is that if you are using them with the intention of diluting them, you get a lot more bang for your buck, I guess. And I love the range that you can have between a dark and a light gray, because you can obviously dilute this even more than I did. And then number 12, That one is very interesting because usually I probably would recommend toning your hair if you are trying to do a more cool tone color like this. And it definitely worked. It looks just as opaque and smooth on the direct dye as it does on the diluted section, but the undertone changed quite a bit. I would say over the 12 it looks a little bit more warm, slightly more like warmish gray, whereas the 11 looks like a slightly more cool gray. Overall, I would say it's a pretty good neutral gray. But even the slight difference of number 12 to 11 did change it. And that's so interesting to me just because usually yellow in the hair often will make a dye look more warm in undertone. But this really could just be formulated to be used on very platinum hair like my swatch was. So especially like if your hair does turn very, very yellow when you bleach it, I would definitely do a strand test, even trying a toner with it to see what you like more. So like I said, this is a pretty unique color in my collection. So as for my comparisons, I do not have anything that's similar currently. I basically just picked my two darkest grays. So our first comparison is going to be Lime Crime in the color Gargoyle. This is comparable to number 9, 10, 11, and comparable to number 12. Lime Crime does have another color called Charcoal, and I probably could redo that one, to be honest with you, because I did that one a very, very long time ago. But just looking at the comparisons on my swatches, the Charcoal looked a little bit more sheer, which is why I went with Gargoyle for this comparison. But as you can see, Gargoyle is not as dark. I'd say for a gray, Gargoyle is probably like a medium. I do have some others in my collection that are lighter. Those would be Sterling from Arctic Fox and Alien Gray from Manic Panic. As far as undertone goes, again, not sure if my camera can totally pick up on it. It's easiest to tell on the number 11, but the Gargoyle leans much more cool. I feel like I can almost see like a bluish undertone in the Gargoyle. It's not a super intense, like almost blue gray, but seeing it next to the Colourpop, it definitely looks a lot more cool in comparison. And I love neutral colors, so maybe eventually I can do a video comparing all of my grays. But from what I can remember, I feel like most of them do lean pretty cool, but we'll see with our next comparison. So my other comparison is Overtone in the color Vibrant Silver. This is number 9. This is comparable to number 10, 11, and comparable to number 12. I think the Overtone is a little bit darker than the Gargoyle, so this is probably my darkest gray that I have before we had the Colourpop. And this one also definitely leans a little bit cool in undertone, which can be beneficial for some people's hair, I'm sure, because sometimes the cool undertones can be really good at canceling other undertones out, especially like warmer orangey colors. But I'm really truly happy to see how neutral the Colourpop is, because again, a little bit unique for what I've seen so far. Depending on your goal, if you're looking for a gray, the Overtone and the Gargoyle from Lime Crime would both probably be fine on super blonde hair. Similar to the Colourpop, as the swatches get a little bit darker, the color sort of shears out on top of those swatches. So I probably wouldn't use something like the Overtone or the Lime Crime over anything darker than a platinum blonde if you're looking for a true like gray style, just because I don't totally know what it would turn out like. You can obviously strand test it because some people's hair, if it's especially very porous, might be fine. But it's hard to deny that the Colourpop being a little bit darker does make it look more opaque in comparison to the lighter grays on the deeper, slightly deeper swatches. Now I'd like to look at the before and after clips. Those, as well as anything past this point in the video, will all be done in natural lighting. I hope my video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so very much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.